Hi, everybody. Good evening. Wow, it's so late. It's so late. Sorry, I'm coming on so late. It's so busy. But good news. Just a lot going on. Because things just got very serious with the letters that we received from President Trump. Okay, things really escalated, and so we are in turbo force. We're in turbo force now with accountability and getting our son's remains. So this is day 1842. 1842. It is August 18th, 2025. Can you believe it? Yes, we're burning the midnight oil. We're doing that every night. Um, eh, there is a um, there's something that everyone needs to know. You can't just file a report and think that something is going to be done about it. Okay, you just can't. You can't do that because we have infiltrators right now. We have a system that is not trustworthy. It really is not trustworthy. There are a lot of fraudsters, a lot of those impersonating, a lot of those that have conflicts of interest. So many that have um, no moral foundation, no loyalty to the oath that they swore to, no loyalty to God, no loyalty to law and order. It is all about personal gain and other loyalties, absolutely, serving foreign and domestic enemies of our country, and we have been infiltrated. That's the bottom line, and I hear all the time from the very beginning of this, because we knew from the very beginning of this that something was really stinky. I kept saying something's very stinky in the Richard Halliday case. Something's very stinky in El Paso law enforcement. Something's very stinky in that prosecuting office. Something's very stinky with Veronica Escobar. Something's very stinky with Beto O'Rourke. Something's very stinky with the command at Fort Bliss. Something's very stinky in the JAG. Absolutely. I mean, you know, um, and you couldn't say it too loud because you didn't know where the smell was coming from, right? You just know that it was stinky. So you didn't know where the smell was coming from, and now we know. We have with the FBI. This we have 22 agencies involved in this, so FBI is just one of them. And in the FBI office, clearly in El Paso, it's been compromised, it's been infiltrated, and they've gotten to high levels, like the assistant special agent in charge, Connell Wetton. He is absolutely compromised. He has conflicts of interest. He has loyalties to foreign and domestic enemies of our country, and and that is protecting anybody that's protecting his Mormon parishioners. And Leilani Hart is Mormon, okay? And so there was a lot of obstruction of what was right, a lot of obstruction of justice, a lot of tampering in order to protect convicted criminal Leilani Hart that confessed to the worst type of crimes against children, facilitating the worst type of crimes against children, and actively engaging in fraud, actively engaging in impersonation, identity theft, and stolen valor. I believe it's stolen valor um, because of her immigration fraud. Um, so this is all what we've been reporting, and Connell Witten, of course, being very compromised, along with Jesus Eddie Nieto Jr., who leaked whistleblower complaint by Judge Roger Rodriguez to Leilani Hart's cousin, which was the former CID Fort Bliss agent, that gave her access to tamper with the files of Richard, to tamper with several files. And the reason why several files is because she is actively she has a long criminal history, and in order and engaging actively in that criminal conduct. And when you are actively engaging in criminal conduct, and you are like her, then your MO is to intimidate. Your MO is to harass witnesses. You're to compromise people falsely, right? Falsely try to discredit people and compromise them, and so there's a lot. I'm sure there's a lot of complaints about Leilani Hart. So we know that there were multiple files that she was given access to by Tavita Nusa, heads up by Eddie Neto in the FBI office there, to complaints filed against them, which is so dangerous, puts people in danger. And and then they're so brazen, they'll try to fundraise on that. They'll impersonate, they will, and of course that's what they're trying to do with Richard's name. They will try to fundraise. We are not collecting any money. At this time, we are not collecting any money. We have not given anybody authority to collect money in the name of Richard Halliday. Find Richard Halliday, justice for Richard Halliday. Anybody that is so doing is committing fraud, is committing a major crime. And so, this is Leilani Hart's MO, is to be a fraudster, is to be an imposter, is to be a fake, is to facilitate the worst type of crimes against children, is to fail to report the worst type of crimes against her own children. Um, that are very illegal, especially if they're, well, very illegal, period. And this happened also when Dallas Hart was in uniform, the worst type of crimes against between his brother and him and his father and him, the worst type of crimes. And this is also facilitating the worst type of crimes against a 7-year-old that was a dependent in the U.S. Army. So to give her access to military facilities, to give her family access to anything in the military, anything in the government, even in the El Paso government, she abused that. Even international with the Interpol, they abused that. With the composite of Dallas Hart, to interfere with uh, identifying Richard. Um, of course, they knew that Richard was no longer alive. It was all a joke to them. I don't know if it was a joke to them. It was interference, absolutely. Obstruction, absolutely. So, yeah, sorry, turn that down a little bit. So, the information that we are getting in, and all the puzzle pieces against Leilani Hart that we are getting in, is really important in getting accountability for our son's loss of life, the cover up, the ongoing severe retaliation against key whistleblowers, the prime whistleblower, uh, uh, ongoing um, retaliation, intimidation, harassment, conspiracy, conspiring together, um, to impersonate, to um, commit fraud, to um, interfere in so many ways in the investigation into our missing son's remains, because this is where we're at right now, right? They try to interfere to get him missing. But the evidence was overwhelming, so overwhelming that two boards, not just one, two boards meeting, and also now the President of the United States, Donald John Trump, confirmed that Richard was. Uh, I'm choosing my words so that I don't get shadow banned. That his life was taken in the line of duty on Fort Bliss, and it was in connection with the cartel tied criminal trafficking, and um, the the assault on him continued after his death, um, the theft, and also the crimes against his remains, his body. They have no respect for the body. And of course, this ties to the funeral and mortuary operations fraud. And of course, it's very important to note that Tavita Nusa, who's a disgraced CID agent, former CID agent who had his badge terminated in 2021 for misconduct. Um, eh, his brother, Major Solomone Nusa, in charge of mortuary operations at the time. Uh, that's very important because the people involved in um, hurting Richard before, during, after the taking of his life, um, have a common denominator, and that common denominators are the funeral business, the mortuary operations business, or organization, or business, and also the Mormon connection. The Mormon connection is important because they were receiving during the whole shutdown of the world, they were receiving privileges to cross the border because there's two temples across the border in Mexico. So they could cross the border. They had passes to do that. And of course, the funeral business also had passes to do that. And of course, being the assistant um, FBI special agent in charge, you had to pass to go across the border. And I know that CID special agent in charge, uh, dirty as hell, um, uh, evil as hell, I should say, Marlon Soto Hernandez, told me absolutely to my face that, he was privileged. When during that whole time in searching for Richard, uh, unnecessarily, because they already had his remains, they were committing fraud against us, right? By not telling us what really happened to our son, by leading us to believe that he was missing, and he was not. They already knew exactly what happened to him, that his life was taken, and that fraud was committed. The worst type of crimes were committed against his body, his corpse, and um, abuses. And so they were covering up, and they came up with a false story, and they misled us. But during that time, of course, he was boasting, Marlon Soto was boasting that he could cross that border. So these are criminals that were given access to um, military files, to criminal justice files, to um, to FBI files to they were given access, and you see that with President Trump's and I believe I don't want to speak for him, but he made it very clear in the letters that he wrote to us that there was a presupposition that he absolutely understood the type of crime that was committed against Richard and us and our whistleblower, um, because these people have access and they impersonate and they are absolutely criminals with this kind of access. And so they can steal your information, and which makes it very easy for them to impersonate um, and commit even worse crimes. So I just we just want you to know that anybody asking for money right now, donations right now, in the name of our son, Richard Halliday, and finding Richard Halliday and justice for Richard Halliday is committing fraud, because we are not at this time collecting any money for Find Richard Halliday, Justice for Richard Halliday. We're working, and we saw the weaponization of this kind of fake charitable persona right at the beginning, with our t-shirts, with collecting the money at the beginning for our travels and for our search and PIs and all of that. And so we really are not collecting any money at this time at all. Um, and so anybody asking for money is committing fraud. We just want to make that very, very clear. We also want to make it clear um, that um, that is also an attempt to get information. Okay, anybody willing to donate and that they are willing to look into, to access their files, to harass, to intimidate, to uh, gain access to who might be helping us, because right now many people are coming forward. Um, there has been a real break in the fear. The fear has seen is seeming to melt away. And the fear that was there against the cartels, against this um, criminal trafficking cabal in El Paso, um, that seems to be melting away. Um, because I think because the people understand what's at stake here, that letting them fester, letting them get away with being a bully, letting them get away with their billion-dollar criminal trafficking enterprise, and then they go and money launder through all kinds of businesses in our society, in our cities, and everything, and then more fraud, and then more crime happens. People are understanding the domino effect of all of this now, and they've had enough. And so the increased participation and whistleblowers and witnesses, people contacting us, that they're being very, very courageous in doing that and giving us a lot of information. And so we want to say thank you so much for all of that, because it's getting us closer and closer to getting accountability, to also add to our filings, because we spend every day identifying crimes, understanding the law behind those crimes, and then documenting it, and then also filing it. And filing it is not so easy. You have to know which agencies. We have a huge bureaucracy, and you have to know where to file it. And a lot of times, multiple individuals. Um, um, Officials, agents, um, yeah, courts, you name it. And, so that is also, um, we've gotten pretty good at it. We have a good database now, and so we are being effective, and that's why President Trump wrote us not one, but two letters. One on August the 11th, and the next one came on August 12th. And I hope, and it sounds like it, and they were just amazing letters, that he sees us as allies for law and order, for accountability, and against these infiltrators of and the infiltrators are traitors. They're treasonous. And I want to make it very clear, many of them have stolen valor. Okay. Many of them uh, have, are committing stolen valor. Okay. Because the stolen valor gives them, um, authority, this access. It gives them access. It gives them a lot of benefits. It gives them extra money. And so that they really like to commit that one. They like to commit that one. They like to impersonate a courageous um, uh, veteran, a courageous veteran, or somebody noble, so that they could collect on all the benefits. And so they definitely commit stolen valor. It really, it's been very obvious. Just so they can even get discounts on their property taxes or whatever. They have no moral compass. They have no love for the country, and for those that have shed their blood, um, for our freedoms, our Constitution. And our freedoms are that we are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And that doesn't mean that that always creates um, uh, goodness, right? It doesn't always mean that it creates goodness. That's why we need to be under God. That's why, our founders said, okay, it's the people, but the people need to be under God. He's the authority. And if we can just do that, then we can hold on to our country. And so that means there's a moral foundation to a healthy country and a healthy judicial system. And so that's why we require oaths of office. And that's why these rogue prosecutors in El Paso, Bill Hicks and James Bonneau Montoya, both of them are rogue prosecutors. They are illegitimate. They did not honor their oaths. Their oaths are illegitimate. They did not properly install, which requires a statement of officer, which means an anti bribery statement. The statement of officer means that you didn't take bribes, right? They didn't properly install. They did not follow the Texas Constitution to become the DA. And so they are rogue prosecutors, they're impersonators. And so that allows crime to fester, because you can have wonderful police officers, but if you have no prosecutors to take it further, to get accountability, then you just let the criminals go, right? You just let the criminals go. So this is why we're in the situation that we are. That's why the cartel have been infiltrating into the United States, into El Paso, and operating with impunity and wearing our uniforms. Wearing our uniforms. Manny Chavira is the chief of police of the El Paso ISD, which a lot of those schools have tunnels underneath, because they're right on the border of the United States and Mexico. and he's absolutely tied to the cartel, and he's absolutely tied to the Palestinian arms dealer Nadal Bayim. He's also tied to the cartel, tied Texas Ranger Gustavo Sanchez. So, and he's tied to the fake news Bob Moore through this A&R Chavira Auto Group, who targeted Richard in 2019, and also trafficked his car. So, it is really important when you are getting accountability to recognize that you're going to have to navigate through this, and it sounds so difficult, but you know what? You just do the right thing. You just do the right thing. They told us to investigate, so we did. We did the right thing. And find Richard Halliday. Will you join my group and share your content in it? Just started it 5 days ago. I'm looking for more content creators like yourself, ma'am. Here is the link. Okay, we'll check that out. We'll check that out, Aaron. I don't know anything about you, so we'll have to check that out because we have been constantly targeted. So if we're just a little bit suspicious with people, that's for very good reason. Very good reason. We've been so targeted. Our son was so targeted. Our family has been targeted. Whistleblowers and witnesses have been targeted. And, that's why we've tried to stay very calm and look at why are they targeting us, identify their crimes, document their crimes, and file their crimes. And with each one of those filings come a puzzle piece. And we have put together these pieces, and that led to the declaration of death for Richard, because we had submitted all of our findings. And then that was in April 24, 2024. And we continued, we never stopped. And in January 24th, 2025, President Trump designated Richards killed in the line of duty. And with the additional paperwork that we received, it was on Fort Bliss. Um, uh, then, with the other evidence that we have, of course, he was forcibly removed from his barracks for being a whistleblower, and his life was taken brutally. And they dishonored his remains. They kept and still are um, keeping his remains from us. So, and of course, uh, with the new evidence coming out, we believe that his remains are tied to this funeral business, the very corrupt and criminal purchase funeral homes that handled all of the victims in the Walmart mass shooting. Of course, Martin Funeral Homes, Sunset Funeral Homes, Angel Funeral Homes, that are connected to Raphael Quran, who has his house. He has many houses. His fancy house, well, they're all fancy because he's a multimillionaire, is right beside Beto O'Rourke. Beto O'Rourke lives right next to Raphael Quran, and he's running this crematorium funeral home because Plenitude is a funeral home in conjunction with the other funeral homes that are transnational. That means they have the freedom to go back and forth over that border. Okay, transnational funeral homes. I don't think that's a good idea, especially when the mortuary operations are so infiltrated and compromised, and that we have a illegal medical examiner, Mario Raskin Ortiz, as the chief medical examiner for El Paso, and getting over $450,000 from taxpayers, and he's an illegal, and he's compromised with the Walmart mass shooting case, with 3905 Bliss Avenue, with the Mexican cartel. He's absolutely compromised with the Mexican cartel. And, so we don't need any transnational funeral homes, but they exist, and they were dumping bodies. Um, Also, the narco cartel groups and their killings. And June alone was 100, 100 um, in the area. And they were dropping bodies at the Plenitude Crematorium, the rotting body, rat infested. The rats were, eating through the corpses, through the victims. And they were charging families of the identified, because there were many unidentified, but the identified, they were charging them for a, a cremation that never happened, and giving the families mortar, building mortar, or the ashes of animals inside an urn, and charging them for that. I mean, it's just crazy, while letting the body of their loved one be piled up for years, rotting away in this courtyard right in the middle of Juarez, Mexico, piled up, over 400 corpses piled up, while the owner is living beside Beto O'Rourke, um, uh, building a business empire in El Paso with his many, many different businesses, um, and getting licenses that he absolutely legally should not be getting, because he's tied to the Sinaloa cartel. The Sinaloa cartel, which is the Chapitos faction, which is El Chapo, a faction of the Sinaloa cartel, which is the pan party the governor of Chihuahua, Mexico, which is Juarez. Juarez is in Chihuahua, Mexico, the state of Chihuahua. And it is ruled by the pan party leader, Governor Mauro Campos. Her mother, Maria Eugenia Galvan, was given the agencies of oversight of Plenitude Crematorium, and lied in records, saying they checked it. They have never checked it. You have 400 plus bodies piled upon each other, rotting away, rats, and you should see the pictures. It's just the stench of it, it just could not, it was just a hellhole, an absolute hellhole, right there. And that was the work of Maria Galvan, the mother of Governor Maru Campos. So they were making money off of USAID, or charitable groups that were getting a government funding, even Mexican government funding, for migrant removal. So migrants that passed away, and also, if they're unidentified, they could be called migrants. So let's say they were victims of the cartel, they could call them migrants. If they were Richard Halliday, they could call him an unidentified migrant, and they could collect funds on that too. So Richard was very valuable. Richard, we have evidence that he was dismembered, and partial remains were in the United States. And, as long as it's identified, they could collect death benefits on him. And of course, with their access to military files, VA files, um, uh, criminal criminal law files. Um, they could impersonate. They could impersonate uh, our family. They could collect benefits, and then send partial remains to Mexico and collect double dip on benefits there as a unidentified migrant. They absolutely tampered with. Now you understand why, because if you've been following this case, why they tampered with our attorney general in Chihuahua, Mexico, um, filings, and our eldest son, giving DA to Chihuahua, Mexico, why they tampered with that. They didn't want to identify Richard, right? They didn't want to identify him, um, because then they would have to repatriate him. They would have a soldier, a U.S. soldier, in their country. Better for them, especially that the governor was involved in this funeral fraud with her mother, to leave him unidentified, call him a migrant, and collect funds on him. So it really is. Um, Thank you so much, Aaron, a U.S. veteran and first responder social group. Okay, absolutely. We'll check that out. And we absolutely want to spread the word on this case. And with President Trump's letters, not one, but two letters. The first one we redacted pretty heavily, and it's a lot of the strategy of accountability, and we don't want to give that out. And then just know that the death penalty is on the table. That was really important. And then, of course, the second one, just clarifying Richard's status as a hero, as fulfilling his duty, as uh, going over and above fulfilling his duty, and should be admired by all Americans. And we absolutely knew this from the beginning that he was not compromised. We looked into all the allegations against him, couldn't find anything. He came out sparkling clean. So that made him a target because they couldn't compromise him and he was a whistleblower. He filed and they could not discredit him. He was really their worst enemy, right? Well, not their worst enemy. President Trump was their worst enemy, right? Because he was instilling and is now law and order. And border security, border vetting. That means all of those hearses, all of those vehicles going back and forth, carrying corpses, carrying weapons, carrying ammunition, carrying children, carrying women, carrying substances, right? Carrying auto parts legally, whatever they were carrying, going back and forth, trafficking. They were going to be vetted now. There was going to be border security. So, so President Trump was absolutely their worst nightmare. And when Richard got there in 2018 and told us it was so bad, and he became a whistleblower, um, uh, corroborating President Trump's um, uh, investigations and audits that were going on Fort Bliss and El Paso at the time. He would be a witness to the crime. Richard would be a witness to the crime that President Trump's administration was prosecuting and investigating and prosecuting. And so they targeted Richard in 2019, and it escalated, of course, in 2020, um, because they could not, targeting him to compromise him, to discredit him. It didn't work. It didn't work. And legally, it might, have damaged Richard's character publicly, for a little bit. But just because Bob Moore runs was running El Paso Matters, right? Or in El Paso Times, right? KTEP. KTEP is his wife's with Angela Kachurga. So they could publicly, with KTSM too, that's compromised. They could get out some bad stories, but they just couldn't do it legally. They couldn't do it in the courts. Richard is squeaky clean. And um, so they decided to really um, to take his life, to take his life. So this was absolutely pre-planned. It was absolutely in conjunction with his chain of command, um, and so that means it's mutiny, uh, absolutely mutiny. This whole case has been mutiny, from General Mealy to General McConville to Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe is absolutely mutiny. They cannot be trusted. He's still active duty. Taylor is still active duty. He's absolutely cannot be trusted. He's a criminal. So is Major General Eisenhower, total criminal. Um, so I think that President Trump um, has just made us a major ally in accountability and instilling back law and order in our country. So thank you so much. God bless you. We will be back tomorrow, but we're getting word that evildoers, fraudsters are trying to collect money in Richard's name. And I just want to tell everyone they're not authorized, they're fraudsters. We are not collecting any money at this time for Find Richard Halliday, Justice for Richard Halliday, for Richard Halliday. Okay, thank you so much. God bless you, and I'll be back tomorrow.